The service pistol. The Army's own testers warned it could fire on its own. They bought it anyway. Now it goes off in the holster. Okinawa, a United States military base. A guard stands his post. The pistol is holstered, on safe. His hands nowhere near it. It fires. The base camera caught all of it. Investigators cleared the guard. A spotless record. His hands never touched the weapon. A round left the gun with no one near the trigger. SIG Sauer says that cannot happen. The P-320 does not fire without a trigger pull. 3 internal safeties would have to fail at the same instant. Firing takes 5 deliberate actions. Either a cleared, decorated guard is lying on camera, or the Army's standard sidearm did the one thing its maker swears it never can. The Army knew. Its own evaluator flagged the gun. It signed the contract anyway. $580 million. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers carrying it on the hip. At least 6 of those pistols have fired with no hand on the trigger. On United States military bases. Holstered, on safe. A Philadelphia jury has called the design defective. A state attorney general is suing to force a recall. In 2025, with all of it on the record, the Army's position is 3 words. It is making no changes. This is the story of a pistol the Army bought before it finished testing, a warning its own evaluator put in writing, an institution that read the warning, signed anyway, and then watched the guns go off and did nothing. Start with the gun. On paper, it is a good one. The P-320 is modular. One core does the firing, and it drops into any frame, full-size or compact. One pistol to arm a whole army. That was the appeal. The part that matters here is what this gun does not have. No external safety, no thumb lever, no little tab in the face of the trigger, nothing on the outside to block it. Just a set of internal parts holding the firing pin still until the trigger moves. SIG's guarantee was simple and absolute. The gun does not fire unless you pull the trigger. On paper, a clean, modern, soldier-proof design. On paper. 2015, the Army went shopping. The program was the Modular Handgun System. The job was to replace the Beretta M9, the pistol that had ridden on American hips since the Reagan years. 12 guns came to the table, the whole industry. It came down to 2, SIG Sauer and Glock. In January 2017, the Army chose SIG. The contract ran up to $580 million, around 280,000 full-size M17s for the Army, compact M18s on top, and orders for the other services over 10 years. SIG came in accurate, modular, and cheaper than Glock. Then, the catch. It is the heart of the whole story. The program was built to run the 2 finalists through a 9-month production verification test first. That is where you find out whether a gun that wins on paper survives contact with reality. The Army awarded the contract before that test was done. It committed the money first. It planned to check the gun second. Glock protested to the Government Accountability Office and lost. The GAO found the Army was allowed to make a single award. Nothing illegal happened. The competition was clean. The betrayal here is quieter than corruption and more ordinary. The Army committed to the weapon before it finished checking the weapon. Then it defended that choice as the problems came in. The problems came from the Army's own side of the house. The Director of Operational Test and Evaluation is the Pentagon's independent evaluator, the office whose entire job is to tell the truth about whether a weapon works. In testing through late 2017, written up in a federal report released that January, it documented the P-320 firing when it was dropped, with no one touching the trigger. With ordinary ammunition, it would sometimes throw a live, unfired round out beside the spent casing. The quick fix for the drop problem, lighter internal parts, came tied to 2 triggers that splintered and broke. Keep this straight. It matters for everything ahead. The drop problem is one specific, separate thing. A dropped gun fires because the weight of the falling striker carries enough force to set off the round. It is real. The Army's own evaluator documented it. SIG fixed it. For the military, it pushed through an engineering change with lighter parts. For civilians, in August 2017, it offered what it called a voluntary upgrade. Listen to that phrase. A voluntary upgrade, not a recall. The word is doing work. A recall admits a defect. An upgrade admits nothing. Of roughly 500,000 civilian P-320s out there, only about 100,000 were ever brought in and retrofitted. That 2017 notice is, to this day, the last time SIG publicly told its customers anything about this at all. Look at what the Army was holding. A pistol it had already bought, already started issuing, now flagged by its own evaluator for firing when dropped and spitting out live rounds. The signature was on the contract. The warning was in the file, in that order. The drop problem is not the part that refuses to go away. There is a second claim, a separate one. The one SIG says is flatly impossible. The claim is that the gun fires while it is holstered. No drop, no fall, no finger anywhere near the trigger. The weapon discharges on its own, in the holster, or as it is drawn, or as it is set down. The reports keep coming from inside the military itself. A Washington state investigation counts at least 6 of these uncommanded discharges on United States military bases in recent years. Walk through a few. The pattern is the point. Fort Leonard Wood. A soldier, holstering his M17, fired a round straight through his own foot. Okinawa, the case from the opening. Investigators called it the most significant of all because the guard's record was spotless and the base video cleared him completely. Camp Pendleton. An officer was clearing his M18 at a clearing barrel, magazine out, weapon on safe, certain he never touched the trigger. The round went off anyway. Picture standing where that officer stood. The magazine is out of the gun, the safety is on. Your finger is deliberately off the trigger because you are running the one drill built entirely around not firing, and the pistol fires. SIG's answer to all of this has never moved, and it deserves to be heard in full. The company flatly denies that the P-320 can fire without a trigger pull. It ran its own test on the disputed mechanism and reported 0 ignitions across 565 attempts. It says a discharge would require 3 internal safeties to fail at the same instant and 5 deliberate actions to fire. It blames every field incident on something else: a worn or modified holster, a foreign object caught in the trigger guard, user error. In court, that defense has largely held. Roughly 20 of these lawsuits have been dismissed. Notice what even SIG's strongest defense never touches. One fact is not in dispute. The Army committed to this pistol and put it on soldiers before the testing meant to vet it was done. Whatever is or is not happening inside the holster, that decision was made with the warning already on the table. The discharges did not stay on the bases. October 9, 2024. A police training range in Spokane, Washington. A recruit drew a P-320 and it fired the instant it cleared the holster. The instructor was standing directly behind him. He looked at the recruit's hand. The finger was not on the trigger. It was not even inside the trigger guard. Fragments hit the instructor and a second recruit. Washington State did not wait. It temporarily banned the P-320, the M17, and the M18 from every one of its properties, out of an abundance of caution. Think about what that is. A state law enforcement body looked at the same pistol the United States Army issues across the force and pulled it off its own ranges as too dangerous to trust. The hardest case to wave away went to the FBI's ballistics lab, after a Michigan State police officer's holstered M18 fired on its own. The FBI found that with the kind of movement an officer makes in a normal day, it was possible to defeat the gun's internal safety catch if its parts lost full contact. That sounds damning. Then read the caveats. The report itself was labeled inconclusive. The FBI reached that result only after it cut a window into the slide of the gun. removing metal that helps hold the spring in place, and after it deliberately forced the internal safeties open by hand. Both of those caveats are real. When a dispute like that cannot be settled on a range, it gets settled in a courtroom, under oath. The courtrooms have not been kind to SIG. Philadelphia, November 2024. A jury found that SIG had defectively designed the P-320 and awarded a wounded man named George Abrahams $11 million after his holstered pistol fired as he walked down a staircase. Now, be precise because it cuts both ways. In June 2025, a judge threw out $10 million of that, the punitive portion. What survived is the part that matters most. The $1 million in compensation stood, and so did the jury's finding that the design itself was defective. In Georgia, a separate jury awarded a man named Robert Lang $2.35 million, and a federal judge upheld it. Those are not the only two. More than 100 lawsuits are in motion, and since 2016, more than 150 people have claimed, in court filings and police reports, that their P-320 fired without a trigger pull. Voice that exactly as it is reported, not as a settled census. SIG points to its own wins, the roughly 20 dismissals, and calls the P-320 one of the safest, most advanced pistols in the world. Then the fight climbed a level. October 2025. It stopped being individuals against a company. The Attorney General of New Jersey sued SIG Sauer directly, demanding a mandatory recall of the P-320 across the state, at SIG's own expense, and an order forcing the company to stop marketing the gun as safe from accidental discharge. At the center of that suit is a death. Detective Lieutenant Walter Imbert, a 20-year law enforcement veteran and an Army veteran, killed in April 2023 when his P-320 discharged while he was cleaning it. The state's case takes direct aim at the exact words SIG had used to sell the gun, that it would not fire unless you wanted it to. Through every bit of this, the evaluator's flags, the base discharges, the bans, the verdicts, the dead detective, one institution has stayed remarkably quiet, the one that bought hundreds of thousands of them. In July 2025, after the FBI report became public, the United States Army issued its position. It is making no changes to its M17 and M18 pistols. Its reasoning? The pistol had been subjected to rigorous safety testing by the manufacturer and the Army, including multiple drop tests. Drop tests. Go back and notice what just happened there. The drop problem is the one issue in this entire story that SIG actually fixed back in 2017. The dispute that is putting officers in the hospital and a detective in the ground is the holster discharge, the one that happens with no drop at all. The Army answered a question nobody was still asking. Be fair, one death in 2025 did force a service to act, and it has to be told honestly because it cuts the other way. An airman named Braden Lovin, 21 years old, was killed at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and the Air Force suspended the M18 across the force and ordered an inspection. Then the investigation came back. This one was not the gun. Another airman had drawn his M18 and pointed it at Lovin as a joke, finger on the trigger, and then airmen lied about it in a cover-up that two of them later pleaded guilty to. The lab found no defect in that pistol. That death was negligence and a cover-up, not a weapon firing itself. It changes nothing about the central dispute, or about the decisions sitting underneath all of it. A pistol the Army bought before it finished testing, still riding on every hip. It sets up the last move, the one that tells you what this was always about. Faced with its own evaluators flagging the gun, juries calling the design defective, and a state demanding a recall, SIG did not redesign the weapon. It went after the laws. In its home state of New Hampshire, in the spring of 2025, a law passed that bars lawsuits claiming a gun is defective simply for lacking an external safety. That is not a random rule. That is precisely the argument every P-320 plaintiff makes. SIG then pushed nearly identical bills in Florida, where the House passed it after the company spent more than $550,000 lobbying there, and in Georgia, where it died in committee when the session ran out. Sit with the logic of that. When juries keep ruling that your product is defective, there are two ways to make the rulings stop. You can change the product, or you can change the definition of defective. SIG reached for the second one. Somewhere right now, a soldier is clipping an M17 to a belt. Same pistol the Army bought before the test that was meant to vet it. Same pistol the Pentagon's own evaluator flagged for firing when dropped. Same pistol that has gone off, by the count of a state investigation, at least 6 times on United States military bases, holstered, on safe. Same pistol a Philadelphia jury called defective. Same pistol a state pulled off its training ranges. Same pistol an attorney general is suing to recall. Same pistol a security camera in Okinawa already caught doing the one thing its maker swears it cannot do. None of that has been enough to change the answer. The contract was signed before the warning. The warning was met with an upgrade, not a recall. The verdicts were met with a lobbying campaign. The bodies and the lawsuits and the bans were met by the Army with 3 words: making no changes. The Army fixed the drop. It never fixed the gun going off in the holster, and it never fixed the habit that started all of it. Buying the weapon before it finished checking the weapon. So the gun stays. The lawsuits go on. The Okinawa footage still sits on a hard drive somewhere, the clearest evidence anyone has of a holstered pistol firing with no hand on it. Every morning, on bases across the country, someone clips that same pistol to a belt and trusts that the one thing it is never supposed to do is the one thing it will not do today. If this made you want to go deeper, the 2 books that shape this video are linked in the description. And so is the vault, where I keep the full script research and everything that didn't make the final cut. Subscribe for more, and the playlist on screen has the rest of these stories.